Tasha Williams was no stranger to rejection. She had grown up in the gritty streets of New York, learned to fight for herself, and built a life of independence. But nothing prepared her for the chill she felt when she met Jinwoo Park at a crowded nightclub in Manhattan. The night was electric, filled with the rhythmic beat of music, flashing lights, and a crowd of strangers who all seemed to have something to prove. Tasha was here to unwind, to forget the stresses of her day job at a local law firm and maybe catch a break from the usual chaos. What she didn't expect was the striking man who caught her eye across the room. Jinwoo was different. His presence was magnetic, pulling her in like gravity. He stood tall, a silhouette of confidence and mystery, his sharp features illuminated by the neon glow of the club. His eyes, dark, intense, and unreadable, met hers, and for a fleeting moment, everything else seemed to disappear. Tasha moved closer, feeling the heat of the crowd pressing in around them. She smiled, hoping he'd notice her, and he did. His gaze held hers for a beat longer than she expected. Her heart raced, unsure whether this was a sign or just another fleeting moment in a crowded night. She approached him, a little hesitant but emboldened by the confidence that had gotten her this far in life. "Hey," she said, her voice steady but laced with curiosity. "I don't think we've met. I'm Tasha." He studied her for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to entertain the conversation. Then, without a hint of a smile, he simply nodded. "Jinwoo," he replied curtly, his accent thick, but his tone cold. Tasha shrugged it off, not deterred. She'd met plenty of people like him in the past, silent, brooding, perhaps a little too cool for his own good. But there was something about Jinwoo that felt different, something that tugged at her in a way she couldn't ignore. "Are you here alone?" she asked, leaning in slightly, hoping to break through his stoic exterior. "I'm fine," he responded flatly, his eyes scanning the room, clearly uninterested in engaging further. The dismissal was swift and sharp, and Tasha could feel the sting of it. Her lips tightened, but she refused to back down. "Well, if you change your mind, let me know. I'm here for a good time, not a long time." Without another word, she turned and walked away, the lingering tension between them palpable. As she moved through the crowd, she stole one last glance at Jinwoo, who was now talking to a group of people, his back to her. She had tried, but as the night wore on, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Jinwoo than he let on. He was cold, distant, but there was something in the way he'd looked at her, and that made her wonder. Was it possible that beneath all the walls there was a man who could feel something for her? The next day, Tasha tried to brush off the strange encounter. She had far too much on her plate to worry about some aloof, handsome stranger. But she couldn't get Jinwoo out of her mind. His indifference was a challenge, one she wasn't used to. That afternoon, Tasha was invited to an upscale charity event at a local penthouse, a gathering of New York's elite. It wasn't her usual scene, but when an old friend offered her an invitation, she figured it couldn't hurt to attend. She dressed in a deep red dress that hugged her curves, a splash of confidence in an unfamiliar world. As she entered the venue, the atmosphere was rich with opulence, crystal chandeliers, expensive champagne, and an air of pretension she wasn't sure how to navigate. The guests, all well-dressed and stiff with politeness, seemed more concerned with their social status than anything else. Tasha felt out of place, but she held her head high. She wasn't going to let a little discomfort ruin her night. She was here for the event, to network and maybe have a bit of fun. But as she made her way through the crowd, she saw a familiar face. It was Jinwoo. He was standing by the bar, his back to her, talking to a well-dressed woman with a charming smile. His eyes flickered across the room, and when they landed on Tasha, she froze. He looked surprised, then quickly looked away, as if trying to pretend he hadn't noticed her. But she knew he had. The icy coldness was unmistakable. Tasha's stomach turned. She had seen the look before, the kind of rejection that made you feel small and insignificant, even in a crowd of hundreds. She made her way toward the bar, her posture stiff and controlled, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her chest. As she passed by, she gave him a polite nod, but he didn't even acknowledge her. It was as if the night they'd shared at the club had never happened. The sting of his indifference was sharp. She had felt that connection, that spark, but to him, it meant nothing. Her heart dropped, but she refused to let it show. As she reached the bar, she caught the eye of a man in a sharp suit who smiled at her. "A drink?" he asked, his tone friendly, but Tasha's mind was elsewhere. She wasn't interested in small talk or fake pleasantries. Tasha took a deep breath, trying to push the disappointment aside. She wasn't going to let Jinwoo's rejection ruin her night. But as she sipped her drink and tried to move on, she couldn't help but wonder, what had she done wrong? Was it her? Or was it just Jinwoo, a man who seemed so closed off, so unapproachable? The sting of Jinwoo's rejection stayed with Tasha long after the charity event. Her pride had taken a hit, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it. She had a life to live, a career to build, and a world that didn't revolve around one man. Or at least, that's what she told herself. A few days later, Tasha found herself at a cafe in Brooklyn, grabbing coffee with a friend from work. They were talking about nothing in particular, but as Tasha scrolled through her phone, an unexpected message appeared. "It's Kwan. I'd like to talk. Meet me tonight." Kwan? Her mind raced. She recognized the name immediately. Kwan Park, Jinwoo's older brother. The one who always kept a low profile, but whose reputation preceded him in whispers. He was known in business circles, but also rumored to be deeply involved in his family's illegal activities. Mafia ties, corruption, the kind of life she'd always avoided. She hesitated for a moment. Why was Kwan Park reaching out to her? And why now, of all times? Her curiosity got the best of her, and she agreed. That night, she found herself at a luxurious rooftop bar in downtown Manhattan. The view of the city skyline was breathtaking, but her mind was elsewhere. When she entered the bar, her eyes immediately landed on Kwan, sitting at a corner booth. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored black suit, a far cry from the casual look his brother, Jinwoo, often wore. Kwan's presence was commanding, and he exuded an air of authority. His sharp eyes followed her as she approached, and for a moment, his expression softened, a small, welcoming smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Tasha Williams, right?" Kwan's deep voice matched his intense demeanor. "I'm glad you came." Tasha, trying to keep her composure, nodded. "Kwan Park, I assume? I didn't expect a meeting like this." He chuckled, his smile remaining. "I know you probably expected someone more familiar, but, well, let's just say I'm a man of few words and fewer surprises." As she sat across from him, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting wasn't as casual as it seemed. Kwan wasn't a man who did anything without purpose, and his words felt loaded with meaning she couldn't yet decipher. He gestured to the waiter, ordering drinks for both of them without asking her preference. She hadn't come here for a drink, but she felt it would be impolite to refuse. Once the waiter was gone, Kwan leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know things are complicated between you and Jinwoo," he began, "but I'm not here to talk about him. I'm here because I think you're someone who might be interested in a different kind of opportunity, one that could change the direction of your life." Tasha's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of opportunity?" Kwan's eyes glinted with something hard to read. "I know you've been hurt, rejected even. And I also know that, in our world, people like you, people with strength and resilience, are valuable. Jinwoo, for all his brains, is too blind to see it. But I see potential. I'd like to offer you something, a role, an alliance." Her brow furrowed. "I don't know what you mean." "The Park family doesn't just deal in business," Kwan continued, his tone now more serious. "We're a family that controls things. Money, power, and sometimes loyalty. Jinwoo may have rejected you, but I see a future where you could be more than just a footnote in this world. You could be someone who stands by my side, someone who can help me lead this family in business and beyond." Tasha was stunned. This was not just an offer. It was a challenge. Kwan wasn't offering her a job. He was offering her power, status, and a place in his world, a world that was dangerous, thrilling, and far removed from the mundane life she'd always known. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Her mind was racing, torn between the temptation of what Kwan offered and the fear of what that world truly entailed. She had always believed in standing on her own 2 feet, but the allure of power was undeniable. Kwan leaned back in his seat, sensing her hesitation. "You're a smart woman, Tasha. I think you understand that this is a chance you can't afford to pass up. But the decision is yours. Join me, and I promise your life will never be the same." Tasha met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words settle into her chest. She didn't know if she was ready for this world, But the idea of revenge on Jinwoo, of proving her worth to someone who had once rejected her, was hard to ignore. "Give me some time to think," she said, standing up from the table, her voice steady, but her heart pounding in her chest. Kwan smiled, his expression unreadable. "Of course, take your time. But remember, Tasha, in our world, time is often a luxury." The next few days were a whirlwind. Tasha couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with Kwan Park, the offer, the power he was extending to her. It was tempting, but the risks were enormous. She had always been careful, cautious, and independent, but Kwan's world wasn't one that allowed for caution. In his world, choices came with consequences. Still, Tasha couldn't deny the pull. Jinwoo had rejected her, humiliated her in a way that stung deeper than she wanted to admit. And now here was Kwan Park, his older brother, offering her a chance to be part of something bigger, a chance to take control of her future. That night, she found herself standing in front of her bathroom mirror, the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. She knew she couldn't continue with her normal life, not after everything that had happened. This was her opportunity for something more, for something that would give her the power she deserved. She texted Kwan, "I'm in, but on one condition: I play by my own rules." Within moments, his response came, "Understood. Welcome to the family." Tasha's heart raced. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter. She was about to step into a world she had only heard about in rumors and whispered conversations. But she wasn't going to back down now. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. The decision had been made, but stepping into Kwan Park's world was proving to be more complex than Tasha had imagined. After texting him her acceptance, she didn't hear from Kwan for several days. She waited, her anticipation building with every passing hour, unsure of what she was really stepping into. But when he finally called her one evening, his voice calm yet commanding, everything changed. "Meet me at Club Gravitas tonight. The deal starts now," Kwan said. Club Gravitas was infamous. It wasn't just another high-end nightclub. It was a place where the underworld's elite mingled, where deals were struck in the shadows, and power played out in the most dangerous ways. Tasha had heard rumors about the club, but she'd never imagined that she'd step foot inside. Yet now, it felt like the only logical step. She needed to prove herself, to see if she could truly handle the world Kwan was offering. When Tasha arrived, she was immediately taken aback. The club was a blend of sleek, modern design and dark, luxurious corners. The pulsating bass of the music drowned out her thoughts for a moment, as she was led by a doorman through a long hallway that felt like a passage into another world. Kwan was sitting at a private booth, his usual cold composure present, but his eyes locked onto her with a curiosity that unsettled her. There was something almost predatory in the way he studied her as she approached. "You came," Kwan said, his voice smooth but with an edge. "Good. The first lesson in this world is simple: loyalty. The second is that loyalty is often bought, not earned." He motioned to the seat across from him, where a laptop sat open, its screen glowing. A large folder was next to it, filled with documents. "I've arranged a meeting for you," Kwan continued, leaning back in his seat. "You'll assist in the upcoming negotiations. This is your introduction to the game." Tasha swallowed hard, glancing down at the folder. The paperwork seemed like a mountain: contracts, handwritten notes, financial agreements, everything tied to the underworld business Kwan controlled. "I thought I was just here to help with the family business," she said, the uncertainty creeping into her voice. "You are. But the business extends beyond the family, Tasha. We control everything, and you will too, as long as you learn quickly." His tone shifted, becoming more intense. "We're not just playing games here, Tasha. Every move counts. Your role starts tonight. Show me you understand." His words stung like a slap in the face. She had no illusions about the danger of this world, but hearing Kwan say it so bluntly made it real. This wasn't some corporate job. It was the mafia. Every decision mattered. Tasha had spent the last few days immersed in the world Kwan had introduced her to. Meetings, negotiations, phone calls, and endless paperwork. She had learned quickly that her role wasn't just about standing by Kwan's side. It was about learning the ropes of the business, getting her hands dirty, and gaining the trust of the people who mattered. But it was more than just the business that fascinated her. There was an unspoken connection with Kwan that she couldn't deny. However, despite her growing attachment to him, something gnawed at her. Jin Woo, the man who had rejected her, was still on her mind, his image haunting her thoughts as she navigated the chaos of her new life. Late one night, when she returned to Kwan's penthouse after another exhausting day of meetings, she found herself alone with him. The tension in the air was thick, and as Kwan poured them both a drink, she couldn't help but voice the question that had been plaguing her. "Kwan," she began, her voice softer than usual. "Why did Jinwoo push me away? I can't stop thinking about him, and I need to know why." Kwan paused, his eyes narrowing for a moment before he set the glass down and turned to face her. There was a long silence as he weighed the decision to share what he knew. "You want the truth, Tasha?" Kwan asked, his voice low. "Jinwoo pushed you away because he didn't want to be part of this world. He's different from me. He's never been comfortable with the family business, with the violence, with the control. And he knew if he allowed you in, he'd lose his focus. He didn't want a distraction, especially not from someone like you." Tasha felt her chest tighten. "So, he didn't love me at all?" Kwan's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Jinwoo loves you in his own way, but he was too afraid of losing himself. He couldn't allow someone like you into his life because he knew it would change everything. He's running from his true feelings, Tasha." Her mind spun, the emotions inside her swirling. Part of her wanted to believe Kwan, wanted to believe that Jinwoo's rejection wasn't personal, that it was his own fear holding him back. But deep down, the pain of that rejection still stung. "Then why did you bring me into this world?" Tasha asked, her voice shaky with emotion. "Why get me involved in all of this?" Kwan's expression hardened slightly. "Because you're strong, Tasha. Stronger than you realize. And I see in you someone who could take this world by storm. I needed someone like you to help me build what we've started, to shape the future, not just for me, but for the family and for us." He leaned in, his gaze locking with hers. "I didn't bring you here for nothing. I see something in you, something worth fighting for." Tasha's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of his words, the heat in his eyes, and the intensity of their connection. But still, the memory of Jinwoo haunted her. Her feelings for Kwan were growing, but the pull of the past, of Jinwoo, was hard to shake. Days turned into weeks, and Tasha found herself deeper in Kwan Park's world than she ever anticipated. The meetings, the negotiations, the power games, it all became second nature. She had a knack for it, something that made Kwan take notice. But even with the allure of power, a part of her still couldn't let go of Jinwoo. The rejection stung more than she wanted to admit, and now, as she spent more time with Kwan, she began to realize just how complex their feelings for each other had become. They were sitting together in the lounge of Kwan's penthouse, an elegant space filled with expensive furniture and a sweeping view of the city skyline. The weight of the evening was heavier than usual as a silence hung between them. Kwan, ever the composed mafia boss, was not looking at her. His focus was on his phone as he typed a message to one of his business associates. But Tasha couldn't help but notice the way his jaw clenched when he glanced at her, a subtle shift in his demeanor. "Do you think we can keep doing this?" Tasha asked softly, breaking the silence. "Playing this game, pretending that we are fine?" Kwan lowered his phone slowly, finally looking at her. The intensity in his eyes was unmistakable. "Do you want to stop?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with something deeper. Tasha hesitated. The truth was, she didn't want to stop. Despite the risks, the power, and the growing tension, she found herself wanting more. She had been brought into this world with the promise of security, a place where she could make her own mark. But the longer she stayed, the more the boundaries between business and personal blurred. "You rejected me first," Tasha continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But now here I am, caught between you and your brother, between loyalty and love." Kwan's eyes softened, and he stood up, walking toward her. There was something in his gaze that spoke of years of burden and hardship, the weight of a life he never asked for but had to carry. "You've always been stronger than you think," Kwan said quietly, his voice almost tender. "You think you're caught between Jinwoo and me, but I see you, Tasha. I see you in a way no one else does. And I know the risk you're taking by being with me." Tasha's heart raced as Kwan stepped closer, his hand gently touching hers. The connection between them was undeniable. In this dangerous world of power and betrayal, Kwan had become something more than just a mafia boss to her. He had become someone she could see herself with, someone who didn't just see her as a pawn, but as a partner. But even as their hands touched, a shadow passed over Tasha's heart. Jinwoo. The rejection still lingered, and the guilt of moving on from him made her feel conflicted. Could she truly move on from the man who had once rejected her? Or was this the start of a new chapter? The simmering tension between the Park brothers had reached its breaking point. What started as a quiet rivalry over business decisions soon escalated into a full-blown conflict. Jinwoo had always been hesitant to take part in the family's illegal dealings, but the recent betrayal by their father had pushed him into a corner. He was now fighting for control of the family business. But his fight wasn't just with Kwan. It was with the entire mafia underworld. Tasha was thrown into the chaos when Kwan called for an emergency meeting. It was a stormy night in the city when Kwan summoned her to the warehouse, the epicenter of his operations. The air was thick with anticipation, and Tasha knew things were about to get serious. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the storm that was coming, but one thing was clear. She was in too deep to walk away. Kwan paced in front of a group of his trusted men, all of them looking at him for direction. Tasha stood off to the side, observing the intensity in the room. "We've been at peace for too long," Kwan announced, his voice strong and commanding. "Jinwoo wants control, and he thinks he can take it from me, but I won't let him tear down everything I've built." The room was silent, everyone waiting for the next move. Tasha could feel the weight of the moment. She was no longer just an observer. She was a part of this. Kwan had made sure of that. "I need you here, Tasha," Kwan said, his gaze meeting hers. "You've seen the games we play, but now it's time for war. Jinwoo is coming after us, and I need to know you're ready for whatever comes next." Tasha nodded, a sense of determination settling in her chest. She had crossed a line that night in the club, agreeing to stand by Kwan's side. And now, as the mafia war brewed, she knew she had to make a choice. She wasn't just with Kwan to take revenge on Jinwoo. She was with him because she believed in him, in the vision he had for their future, and in the love that had begun to grow between them. But as the storm clouds gathered over the city, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that the battle between the Park brothers was only just beginning, and that she would be forced to make sacrifices she wasn't ready for. In the cold, dimly lit warehouse, Kwan turned to her, his expression filled with resolve. "I'll protect you, Tasha, but we can't afford to be weak. Not anymore." Tasha stood at the edge of the rooftop, staring out at the skyline. The weight of the last few weeks had taken its toll, and her heart was heavy with the burden of the choices she had to make. Below her, the sounds of the city buzzed, but up here, it felt like the world had stopped. She had spent the night in Kwan Park's penthouse, but her thoughts were consumed by the storm that had gathered around them. The mafia war between Kwan and Jinwoo was nearing its peak, and the tension between the brothers had reached a boiling point. But there was something even more pressing than the fight for control, the fight for her heart. It was clear that Kwan loved her. His quiet strength, his ability to protect those he cared about, it drew her to him in ways she couldn't explain. But Jinwoo, the man who had rejected her, still lingered in her thoughts. She had been caught in the pull of his cold indifference, but now, with everything on the line, she understood that Jinwoo's rejection wasn't personal. It was a product of his fear of the very world that she was now part of. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to find Kwan walking toward her, his sharp eyes softening when they met hers. "Tasha," he said, his voice low but steady, "the choice is yours. But remember, whatever you decide, I'll stand by you." Tasha's heart pounded in her chest. It had taken everything inside her to get this far, to embrace the life she had found with Kwan. But she couldn't escape the fact that Jinwoo was her past, the man who had once rejected her, and the man who had been caught between his own fears and the weight of his family's legacy. "I'm not sure I can do this anymore," Tasha whispered. "The war, the lies, the loyalty tests, it's all so much, and I'm caught in the middle." Kwan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You don't have to carry this alone, Tasha. You never have to choose between us. But I'll fight for you no matter what." She nodded, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her heart. Kwan had always been the one to fight for her, even when she didn't deserve it. But now Jinwoo's presence in her heart had started to fade, and Kwan's steady loyalty was what she needed to move forward. The next day, the storm broke. A full-blown confrontation erupted between Kwan and Jinwoo. The mafia war that had been building for months finally reached its breaking point. Tasha, standing in the shadows, watched as the two brothers faced each other in the dimly lit warehouse, each holding on to the weight of their past decisions. Jinwoo's eyes flickered with conflict, and for the first time, Tasha saw the vulnerability that had always been hidden beneath his cold exterior. He had rejected her, yes, but he had never truly let her go. And now, as the brothers stood face to face, Tasha understood that this was not just a fight for power. It was a fight for redemption, for truth, and for love. "You don't have to do this," Tasha said, stepping forward. The room fell silent as both brothers turned toward her. "I've been torn between the two of you, but I know now where my heart lies." She looked at Jinwoo, her gaze soft but firm. "You were afraid to love me. I understand that now. But I can't keep holding on to something that isn't real." Then she turned to Kwan, her heart swelling with certainty. "I choose you, Kwan. You're the one who's always been there, the one who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Kwan's face softened, and he took a step toward her. "I've always known, Tasha. I just wanted you to see it too." Jinwoo, watching the exchange, finally spoke. "I've been fighting my own demons, but I see it now. What you two have is real, and I've never had the strength to fight for that." He turned to leave, the weight of his own burden pressing down on him. Tasha took a deep breath. With Kwan by her side, they had the strength to face whatever came next. The mafia war was far from over, but the choice she had made was final. The fight for power would continue, but her heart had found its place. 1 year later, Tasha stood by Kwan Park's side, now the mama of a flourishing empire. The mafia world was still as dangerous as ever, but with Kwan by her side, the family business had become more than just power. It had become a force for good, a way to rebuild everything that had once been broken. Together, they had turned the family legacy into something that transcended violence and deceit. She had found love in the most unlikely of places, and through the chaos and turmoil, Tasha had learned that love, real love, was worth the fight. She had chosen her own path, and now, with Kwan, her heart was at peace. They had built something together that no one could tear apart. And as she looked out over the city skyline with Kwan's hand in hers, she knew this was just the beginning. Thank you for watching Folk Tales by Quindora. For more interesting stories, please click on the subscription button